Is there any harm in humor? What's so funny? Tonight at 6 on Town Hall.
For what's happening this weekend, watch Steve Dunn, Channel 2 News.
ABC News. This week with David Brinkley. Now, from our Washington headquarters, here's David Brinkley.
Every year for a generation, the U.S. government has spent more money than it had and borrowed the difference, much of it from foreign countries. The U.S. Congress, in particular, has become addicted to borrowing, running up debt, paying billions in interest, and assuming somehow that sometimes somebody would pay it off. Even so, we're still pressed for money to help the states and cities with their local problems, to pay off customers of failed S&Ls, and 100 others. Sometime there has to be a reckoning. Is now the time? We'll ask today's guests. The U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Nicholas Brady, Senator Pete Domenici, Republican, New Mexico, of the Senate Budget Committee, Representative Leon Panetta, Democrat, California, Chairman of the House Budget Committee, and Kathy Whitmire, Mayor of Houston, and outgoing President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Some background information from our man Jack Smith, and our discussion here with George Will, Sam Donaldson, and Cokie Roberts, all here on our Sunday program. First, a little news since the Sunday morning papers. Another earthquake in Iran this morning, and the government estimates the loss of life in Thursday's earthquake to have risen to 50,000 people. Here's a report from ABC's Jim Hickey in Tehran.
In the northern Iranian town of Rudbar, there is chaos. A constant stream of ambulances carrying the injured and dying race through the streets, crowded with rescue workers, relief trucks, and the homeless. Nearly everyone here now is homeless. This man, gesturing to where his house once stood, is typical. He's lost everything. This once thriving town of 200,000 people is almost totally destroyed. All this gone in less than a minute. The destruction of Rudbar and the surrounding area is astounding. This was the nearby village of Manjil. As the people grieve over what has happened to them, another strong earthquake was reported today in the Caspian Sea area. Victims here are still in shock from Thursday's quake. This man says he lost 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and 12 nephews. 11 members of this boy's family are dead. It's hard to truly estimate how many people were killed. No one is keeping an accurate count. The Iranian government is coping as well as it can. The Air Force is airlifting in food and relief supplies, airlifting out the severely injured. Medicine is in short supply, and Iran denies reports it is turning down worldwide offers of blood and relief workers. The first shipment of U.S. relief supplies is due to arrive in Tehran today. The earthquake took away everything these people have. Having survived it, they have only each other to cling to. Jim Hickey, ABC News, Rudbar, Iran.
The Chinese government announced that this year it'll take the first census in history in the world's most populous country, with a population something over 1 billion. To count all these people, China had to hire 7 million census takers. We'll be back with all the rest of today's program in a moment.
This week with David Brinkley, brought to you by GE. From plastics to financial services, we bring good things to life. And by ADM, supermarket to the world.
Look what ADM research has cooked up. A vegetarian patty that contains dietary fiber, is low in fat, and free of cholesterol. One that tastes so good that in England over 50 million of them were sold last year alone. It's a food made to meet the demands of vegetarians. And who knows where it may land next. ADM, supermarket to the world.
If you see a bearish future in the decade ahead, consider the changes sweeping the world and the opportunities they offer.
about a year now, we have heard talk of a promised peace dividend. That is, the money saved from reducing spending on our military forces. Well, this week we heard that the peace dividend is already gone to bail out depositors in the failed savings and loans. We also got the news this week that the federal deficit is vastly bigger than we have been told it was. Government spending, in short, is totally out of control. Before we ask today's guests about this, here's some background from Jack Smith. Jack?
David, everyone this week, it seems, was looking for money.
You go down to Washington trying to get a piece of the pie, the door is slammed in your face.
Money for local budgets, money for the federal budget.
We have a very, very big problem, and we need a very big, bold solution.
But it's a search for money that isn't there.
We need to slash spending and raise taxes merely to get to ground zero.
In Chicago, the annual Conference of Mayors, complaining that cities are the first in line for budget cuts, demanded a hefty share of the peace dividend being debated in Washington. But Representative Dan Rostenkowski, chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, had disappointing news for the mayors. The peace dividend is being eaten up by the savings and loan bailout.
The greedy, corrupt savings and loan industry is a higher priority than the poor and needy of our country.
More and more the cities are coming to believe that the Congress does not care.
It's a tug of war over federal dollars the mayors are losing because the cost of rescuing depositors in the failed thrifts keeps rising. Treasury Secretary Nicholas Brady last month upped his estimate of the cost of the S&L bailout to $132 billion. Other estimates go as high as $500 billion. And as the cost rises, the crisis becomes more political.
We aim for a simple, uncompromising position. Throw the crooks in jail.
The president this week promised vigorous prosecution of the money managers responsible for the crisis, but critics in Congress called it too little, too late.
They're a typical White House hoopla show. A lot of flag waving, but no real results.
But how do you get results when there's not enough money? In Washington, the month-long budget summit between Congress and the White House to cut the federal deficit seems to be stalled.
The administration submitted a deficit reduction plan this week, but Democrats rejected it as a warmed-over version of the 1991 budget the White House submitted back in January.
Simply putting a new suit on that old corpse is not going to revive it.
If you don't like the president's proposal, who makes the first offer? How do we take the next step?
The two sides are paralyzed by fear of the political consequences of raising taxes.
Mr. Reagan will raise taxes, and so will I.
Democrats are haunted by the memory of Walter Mondale, defeated in a landslide 6 years ago after pledging to raise taxes to cut the deficit.
Read my lips.
And Republicans are haunted by the fear of losing the popular no new tax issue.
If we're going to confront this deficit issue, it's going to have to be some give on all sides. And frankly, the politics, at least up to this point, has very little give.
Aggravating matters was the disclosure this week by Budget Director Richard Darman that estimates of next year's deficit, even without counting the cost of the S&L bailout, have risen to around $160 billion. A huge sum that cannot be papered over.
You just couldn't do it. Even with the old tactics of lying about the budget projections, you can lie for about $30 billion. You can't lie for $100 billion.
The Graham-Rudman balanced budget law requires Congress and the President to bring next year's deficit down to $64 billion. If they miss that target, the law will force across-the-board cuts in federal spending in October of more than $80 billion, so-called sequestration that would cause chaos. Defense reductions of 25 to 30% affecting national security, the forced furlough from jail of several thousand federal prisoners, airport shutdowns, and increases in air traffic delays of up to 600%.
We cannot walk away from the problem this year. We can't walk away from it. We have to act on it.
The government simply does not have the money to do everything it wants. It could raise taxes, but doesn't have the courage. It could borrow more, but that's how it got into this mess in the first place. The national debt is so big now, the interest on it has become the fastest-growing federal program. David?
Jack, thank you. Coming next, Kathy Whitmire, the mayor of Houston, Texas, and the outgoing president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And shortly, members of the two congressional budget committees, Senator Pete Domenici, Republican, New Mexico, and Representative Leon Panetta, Democrat of California, and finally, the Secretary of the Treasury, Nicholas Brady. In a moment.
Freedom is all that matters. Freedom is everything.
There's a new light shining over Eastern Europe.
The Hungarians are waiting for a very long time.
A light of hope, joy, and most of all, a new light of freedom.
Everything is changing. It's wonderful. Easter miracle. I'm so happy.
And in this spirit, GE has entered into a historic partnership with a company called Tungstrom, Hungary's leading lighting company.
Freedom is something that you have to work for very hard.
Like a dream. A beautiful dream.
At GE, we're proud to play even a small part in helping the Hungarian people build what promises to be a truly brilliant future.
I'm too young again.
No matter where in the world you find yourself, if you lose your Visa Gold Card, we'll be sure to find you, because Visa will deliver a new card and emergency cash right to you. Whether you're negotiating the powder in Zermatt, exploring the coral off Bermuda, or simply checking out some Puyi Fumet at the Hotel de la British, where you can't even check in with American Express. Visa Gold, it's everywhere you want to be.
This week, toxic waste. One of our dirtiest problems may have the simplest solution under the sun.
If we can perfect this, this will be a major step forward for the environment.
And foster parents burning out and quitting. Some of the ways to keep from giving up. Watch Peter Jennings on ABC's World News Tonight this week.
Herr Whitmire, thank you for coming. Happy to
Thank
have you
you.
with us. Here in the studio with us are George Will and Sam Donaldson, both of ABC News. Now, Your Honor, here in Washington, the government gets an awful lot of advice on what it should do with its money. What is yours?
Well, our advice is that we've got to put some focus in this country on developing our most important resource, and that is our people. We're not going to be able to maintain competitiveness in the 1990s unless we put a stronger focus on the needs of the people who live in American cities, and that is specifically the need to step up our efforts to improve the opportunities for our children through better daycare programs, through an increase in the Head Start program, through better education, through more literacy programs, job training programs. Those are the kinds of things that we're going to have to do because we simply can't afford to put all of our priorities somewhere else and then to see the children in American cities growing up without hope and without quality health care, without a decent place to live, and most of all, without an opportunity to get the kind of education and job training that will allow them to have a decent job.
Well, now, you have seen the performance of the U.S. Congress and of the Bush administration so far. Is that a realistic expectation on your part?
I think our job in the U.S. Conference of Mayors is to articulate the priorities, and I do believe that America's people have to be its top priority. What we have seen in the decade of the 1980s is a dramatic increase in the federal deficit at the time that we were cutting the programs that would help America's people. And with the backdrop to all that, we have seen the epidemic AIDS spread across our country, increasing the need for health care, and we have seen the introduction of crack cocaine, which has devastated our cities.
Mayor Whitmire, at the time that the government was A, cutting services, and B, cutting taxes, and C, increasing the deficit, the administration doing that was getting itself, the Reagan administration, reelected by a whopping margin. That indicates that the American people, by and large, like what's happened, which is the federal government saying, what's most important is not to raise taxes and let the cities spend for themselves. Do you think one party is measurably different than the other party with regard to this?
You know, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not at all prepared to make this a partisan issue. I represent a bipartisan group of mayors who have worked together and frankly agreed on where the priorities need to be.
I understand that the mayors all agree they want more money, the mayors regardless of party. My question is, do you, as a Democrat, but as a mayor, believe that the Democratic Party nationally is really significantly different than the Republican Party with regard to its policies toward the cities?
You know, what we have to deal with is a Republican administration in the White House and a Democratic majority in the Congress. And frankly, we haven't done very well during the 1980s. We're not here to look to the past. We're here to look to the future, to a new decade when we will have a different scenario around the world that will affect the policies that are made in this country.
The great governing fact of the 1990s is surely quite apparent already. It is, A, the government's out of money at the national level, and B, the strongest, indeed the only strong feeling in the country is taxophobia, the desire not to have your taxes increased. Therefore, what hope do you have for any change under either party?
Well, what we have found in the cities is that because of the lack of responsiveness at the federal government, and frankly because of the unwillingness in the 80s to put a priority on the human needs and the need for human development, that we in each city across the nation have had to do a lot of things. We've all raised taxes. I don't know a mayor who hasn't raised taxes, and most of us have been elected again in spite of that fact. In addition to that, we have had to cut back. We have had to become more efficient. Most of us have engaged in reducing administrative costs, going to privatization, things that would make us more efficient. And we have implemented more user fees. We have charged more people for our services. We have increased the revenues. We've cut the expenses. In many cases, it's been at great cost because maintenance programs and infrastructure development have been neglected in some cities.
Mayor, let me pursue this business about taxes. You're telling me then that you're telling us that even though the Reagan administration and Congress cut taxes at the national level, you mayors have raised them at the local level. So I suppose that citizens have not paid less. They've just paid it to a different coffer.
Well, that's absolutely accurate. In fact, in my state and many others, we've just seen the states have to raise taxes as well. So it really doesn't do us a lot of good to just keep shifting the tax burden from one place to the other. What we have to have is a partnership that tackles the priorities. And certainly dealing with the deficit is a priority, but dealing with the needs of developing the people in this country and making them competitive has to be an equal priority.
Let's talk money some more now. Where do we get the money? Your formula is that we raise taxes in some unified way, and I take it that we also cut expenses. Where do we cut them? Just from the military?
Well, I can tell you from our own experiences in the cities that we've had to make a lot of tough decisions that have made us more efficient. And so I'm not prepared to believe that there are no areas of the federal government which, through some careful analysis, can, in fact, be cut to become more efficient.
How about Medicare and Social Security? Let's get into the trust funds.
You know, the mayors are not proposing any cuts in programs because that's not our job. We do that at the local level. We're elected to do it at the local level. We do it. We make the tough decisions. We're not the ones who are elected to comb through the federal budget to figure out where to increase the revenues and where to cut the spending. But we are elected to articulate the priorities and to convince the people who elect the members of Congress and the federal administration that we simply must put a higher priority in this country on education, health care, job training, job placement, or we're simply not going to be competitive.
But it's up to those other people to come up with the money. In other words, you say the priority is all of that, but now you folks come up with the money.
The money has to come from decreased spending and increased revenues, different types of revenues. We all know that. That's really no debate. But in terms of us deciding exactly what the federal budget scenario should be, I don't think we're the ones who ought to presume to tell Congress about that. What we ought to do is to explain the devastation that crack cocaine has brought to our cities and the increase in crime rate and the desperate need for a federal-local partnership to tackle that problem.
Mayor Whitmire, thank you. Thank you very much for being with us.
Pleasure
to have you. Coming next, Senator Pete Domenici, Republican, New Mexico, senior Republican on the Senate Budget Committee, and Representative Leon Panetta, Democrat, California, chairman of the House Budget Committee, and shortly, the Secretary of the Treasury, Nicholas Brady. In a moment.
Each day, we make enough flour for 25 million loaves of bread. But we're not a baker. We make enough sweeteners each day for 92 million soft drinks. But we're not a bottler. We also produce enough protein meal each day to meet the daily requirements of 30 million head of cattle. And yet we're not a butcher either. We're the Archer Daniels Midland Company, a major link in America's food chain. Each day, our processing plants are capable of transforming more than 3.5 million bushels of grain and oilseeds into food and feed ingredients. Corn, wheat, soybeans, peanuts, sunflowers, barley, flax, sugarcane, cottonseed. At ADM, we're helping America use its agricultural abundance to feed the world. So you can understand why we look at harvest time so optimistically. After all, it's not the end of this crop. It's just begun to grow.
This Week with David Brinkley will continue in a moment.
A rock concert controversy. Monday should lip syncing become illegal.
And then later in the week, Burt Reynolds and Jeannie Francis, right here on Good Morning America.
It happens just once each year, and it's happening right now at Smith's Home Furnishings. I'm talking about Smith's spectacular half-yearly sale and the sensational savings you'll find in every department. I'm also talking about the sensational deferred finance offer available during this sale. 1 year with no investment. That's right, even with Smith's half-yearly sale prices, you can buy with no down payment, no monthly payments, and no interest until June of 1991. That's no cash out of your pocket for an entire year. If there was ever an unbeatable offer, if there was ever the perfect combination of pricing and financing, it's available right now at Smith's Home Furnishings. All Smith stores will be open until 8 p.m. tonight for this special sale. All express delivery offers will be available. All you need is the desire for new furniture, appliances, bedding, or electronics. But don't wait. Smith's half-yearly sale happens just once each year, and it's happening right now. Plan to visit the Smith's Home Furnishings nearest you before 8 p.m. today. You'll be glad you did.
What's So Funny? A comedy special tonight at 6 on Town Hall.
Senator Domenici, Congressman Panetta, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Now, you heard the mayor of Houston a minute ago give us an absolute laundry list of needs as she sees them in her local community. We heard this week from the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee that the so-called peace dividend, the money we might save from cutting back the military, is already gone to pay for the S&L's losses. So is Mayor Whitmire likely to get anything at all, Senator?
Well, frankly, I don't think we would have had money for vast new spending programs with or without the S&L prices. Those who thought the peace dividend was going to come from defense cuts, as I see it, the defense cuts are going to go to deficit reduction. I don't think there's going to be a lot left over. People had it spent about 4 or 5 times. The important thing is that we have to fix the deficit so that we can fix the economy. The most important thing as a mayor, I was a mayor, is to make the American economy grow again at 3.5% or 4%. If we can't do that, then all these problems pale. So our job in this economic summit is to fix the deficit. And frankly, we can do it. I can't tell you the frustration. Some of us have been ready for weeks, and we just can't get these negotiations going. If I were a cynic,
why not?
If I were a cynic, I would think some don't want it to proceed.
Why wouldn't they?
Well, it seems to me that we have spent plenty of time defining the problem.
Well, name names, Senator. Who is some?
Well, you know, there's about 25 people in this. If we could get together, we can solve this problem. There's never been a conference like this. The president's there.
To succeed?
Well, perhaps Leon should, Chairman Panetta should explain it.
The problem you have with the summit
is the Democrats?
The problem you have are 3 things, 3 basic problems that surround the summit, just like they surround the whole issue of the deficit and our ability to restore resources. First, you've got tough choices to make. They're not easy choices on defense, on entitlements, or taxes. Not easy. Nobody's wanted to confront them. Secondly, we're in a political year, and there's a lot of political paranoia as to what party is going to pick up these choices. And thirdly, very frankly, there is a lack of sense of crisis about this whole issue. We have not delivered the message to the American people or to our colleagues that this is a serious enough problem that demands these kinds of choices.
The American people have delivered the message to you.
The fact is that
They're
the American
very angry and upset. You should read my mail.
No, we get the same mail, but a lot of it.
I'm not in Congress.
Well, but a lot of it is the fact that they will basically say, yes, the deficit is a big problem, but don't cut my benefits, don't raise my taxes, go someplace else.
But the truth of the matter is that this group of United States representatives, senators, and the president decided to get together to solve the deficit. We either are going to be leaders or we're going to sit around waiting for somebody to tell us how to do this. And frankly, for those who think we have to make draconian cuts, we just don't have to. Defense is going to take its share. That's the big difference from 5 years ago.
2% a year?
It's going to supply
2% a
over
year?
5 years. It's going to supply over 5 years, somewhere between 100 to 170 billion of the needed deficit reduction. That's a brand new part of the equation. It's the middle piece. Entitlements and domestic non-entitlements.
Once upon a time, Senator Domenici, several years ago, was willing to explore the idea of going into Social Security, slipping COLAs, doing other things that were necessary. Are you still willing to do that?
Look, we have everything on the table. But frankly, I don't think you have to address the COLAs to fix this budget deficit. If there are those that want to, and it's the majority desire, that could be a decision. But you know, entitlements alone are growing at 35% over the next 5 years. Now let me ask, could you reduce that growth by 5%?
Well, let me
if
ask,
you did,
could you do it?
Absolutely.
Well, are you willing to do it?
I am willing to do it. I have proposals to do it.
Are the others willing? The others you've been meeting with?
They will eventually do it, because you will not solve this with just defense cuts and taxes. That's just not do it.
There is a fundamental lack of concern about the basic problem we face. We're looking now at a deficit that is virtually out of control. We're now looking at what was supposed to be a $100 billion deficit is now going to be $200 billion this year. We're looking next year at what we hoped would be a $64 billion deficit is going to be $232 billion. The impact of that in terms of borrowing, in terms of our national savings, in terms of our ability to confront any issues, much less the mayor's concerns that she's facing. The fundamental problem is we are lacking resources to confront these kinds of issues because of a deficit that's out of control. We're going to have to face these choices.
I don't agree with that either.
Wait, before you can get to the difficult choices you talk about, Senator, don't you have a prior difficult choice, which is to tell the people honestly what the deficit is? Now, I come to the Social Security question. The deficit is masked to the tune of, what, $60-some billion a year this year by the abuse of the Social Security reserves, what we used to smilingly call the Social Security reserves. They're not reserved. Is the Senate, is the House prepared to take Social Security off budget?
We are. We did that in the House budget resolution.
Right.
Now, I think we should.
Absolutely. The Senate. Now, what does that do to now what deficit are we talking about?
Well, frankly, here's where you have to come out. You have to have a budget that will save between 50 and 60 in the first year, between 450 and 550 over 5 years. We'll take Social Security off budget, redefine the Gramm-Rudman targets.
Okay. That's the second liberalization of Gramm-Rudman.
And it'll be for 5 or 6 years. It'll go on. And you will have solved the deficit. So to talk about other issues, the RT, the Resolution Trust Corporation, Social Security, doesn't make any difference. This is the size of the problem, and it can be done.
Congressman, a member of your party, Pat Moynihan, says we got to cut the Social Security taxes. He says it's outrageous for the Liberal Party in this country to tolerate a situation in which 74% of the American taxpayers pay more in Social Security taxes than a regressive tax than they pay in income taxes. Is he right?
I think he's right with regards to the problems of regressivity in the tax system. But I am concerned that before we take a step to reduce the Social Security tax increase, we've got to address the issue of whether or not we're going to remove Social Security from the calculation of the deficit. That I agree with Pat Moynihan on, and I think both Democrats and Republicans agree. We've got to focus on the non-Social Security deficit. Economists think that that's right. Those in the House and the Senate think that that's right. And then we have a major problem of how we get to a balanced budget with the non-Social Security deficit.
Let me make my point. I don't think he's right on either point. First, it doesn't make any difference whether it's on or off, but you got to take it off because the point has been made. Secondly, the regressivity is solved by an earned income tax credit that goes to the poorest people. That's how you solve that problem with reference to Social Security.
Congressman, aren't you saying, all right, we'll concede the bookkeeping point. We'll take it, but we're going to keep the money, and we're going to keep using the money. Some would say abusing the money, embezzling, stealing. These are the verbs that get tossed around in this discussion. Isn't the Democratic Party flinching by saying we're going to keep the money from this regressive tax because we can't live without it?
Look, the basic problem is that once we made the decision that we were going to try to secure the Social Security system as we did, I think that's an obligation we ought to stick to and not just play games with either the tax or the benefit side of it at that point. I think our bigger problem is what are we going to do on defense spending? What are we going to do with regards to other entitlements? What are we going to do with regards to taxes? All three have to be confronted. And very frankly, in that summit, those three issues are not being confronted.
Let me tell you, Pat Moynihan is wrong. He just changed his mind. He ought to get the embezzlement and the thievery and those things out of his vocabulary. 18 months ago, 20 months ago, he was for things just as they are, and now they've turned into something else. He's just changed his mind.
The question is not who changed their mind. The question is who's right.
Well, you see, if you continue to leave that Social Security tax in and buy Treasury bills down, you have essentially provided for a dramatic reduction in the federal deficit, which inures to the benefit of the senior citizens of the future.
Let me take you to the
That's
savings and
plan.
loan. Let me take you to savings and loan crisis. Marlon Fitzwater, the president's press secretary, says it's the Democrats that have to be looked at. Jim Wright, Tony Coelho, Fernand St. Germain, all gone now from the House, but they were part of the problem. 2 members of the Keating Five, both Democrats, Senator Kerry in the Senate, they're the ones who are responsible for the savings and loan crisis, right?
Look, if we're going to start deciding that the S&L crisis was a partisan issue, then we'll never get out of that hole any more than if we try to decide on the deficit issue whether it was a Democratic or Republican problem. The fact is you don't reach these size problems and not have both the parties and the administrations to blame. Republican administrations failed to frankly enforce the regulations. They deregulated at a time when they should have been regulating them strongly. And the Congress, in turn, was beginning to follow that kind of deregulation path as well. But this is an issue in which the past crisis belongs to both parties. The issue right now is, do we go after those involved? And that, I think, is largely a decision of the administration.
The president now means to do it?
Yes.
Senator,
Looks
you'll be
that
the
way.
last word.
Well,
Sir.
frankly, that's history. We ought to go after the crooks. The truth of the matter is...
Well, Fitzwater just said it last week.
But the truth of the matter
Was he
is...
wise to say that?
The truth of the matter is this large group of senators and representatives and the president's people, we are there with, kind of tuning up our fiddles while the economy smolders, and we had a chance to fix it, and we better get started at it this coming week.
All right, Senator Nero, thank you very much. And Congressman Panetta, thanks very much. Glad you came.
Thank you.
Coming next is Secretary of the Treasury, Nicholas Brake. In a moment.
In 1918, a small team of GE engineers set a new high-altitude record for an aircraft engine. What made it unusual was that they did it without an airplane. Back then, no plane could fly high enough to test the new turbo-supercharged engine. So they did the next best thing. They halted 14,000 feet up Pikes Peak. After several fits and starts, this remarkable new engine roared to life. Same ingenuity and team spirit that has brought GE from America's first jet engine to the world's most advanced.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you look out the left side of the cabin, you'll see Pikes Peak.
Which proves when people work together, there's no telling to what heights they can soar.
The world's finest amateur athletes continue their quest for gold in the ring, on the track, and across the map at the U.S. Olympic Cup. Then on Schlitz Malt Liquor Professional Boxing, Olympic gold medalist Andrew Maynard puts his perfect record on the line against former champ Bobby Chaz. It's all today on ABC Sports.
Mr. Secretary, thanks for coming. Nice to have you with us. A green tie you got this morning. Now, in the forthcoming political campaign, there's going to be, I would guess, 275,000 words said about the S&L crisis, the cost of it, the scandal, who is responsible for it. Do you have a nominee for this honor?
Not really, David. I'm not in the blame game. I think what the American people want is a organized, dedicated, calm, quiet approach to cleaning up this problem. And that's what we're trying to do.
You think they're likely to get anything as nice and sweet as that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's going to be political back and forth. There has to be. But the program that the Bush administration has put out, which is very simply to make sure that those who have put their money in the banking system, the S&Ls that are guaranteed by the federal deposit, get their money back. There are 108 million accounts, I might say, some 40 or 50 million people who rely on that system. So that's where the money's going. 2, to make sure that we prosecute and pursue the criminals involved. And 3, do it at the least cost to shareholders. And 4, make sure that it doesn't happen again. Make the S&L operators put money up. we're asking them to put only 3 cents out of every dollar up, and that's new.
Mr. Secretary, you say you're not in the blame game, but you know that Marlin Fitzwater, the president's press secretary, certainly leveled a lot of blame last week. When you say you're not in the blame game, are you saying that Fitzwater ought not to have done that, or are you just saying, I'll let others do the dirty work of partisanship, I'll just keep myself above it?
No, Sam, I don't think that the as you say, the dirty game of partisanship is what we're...
Dirty work.
Dirty work of partisanship is what we ought to be doing. We have a problem before us. It's unprecedented. It's going to take some time. We should continue to work the problem. That's what the American people want. There are going to be charges back and forth. This is an election year. There have to be. I'm fully aware that that's going to continue.
Well, are you agreeing with Fitzwater then? Are these Democrats that he cited?
You know,
I won't go down the list again.
I don't pay a lot of attention to either who did it or when they did it. That's the problem of the past. What we've got now is an unprecedented national problem. We have to take care of it. That's what the people want.
All right, the president this last week rededicated his administration to ferreting out those who have misused their positions of trust in the savings and loan business. Does that include his own son, Neil?
Well, Sam, people have, of course, brought Neil Bush up. I have no idea where the facts will lead us. I happen to know Neil Bush. I can't imagine that he broke the law, but the facts will have to come out.
Will he be investigated just as strongly as anyone else, however, against whom allegations have been
Well, I
leveled?
would think so. When they've hauled him, one individual, up before the House Banking Committee, there are a lot of people who were directors. This man wasn't even in the savings and loan business. He was a director. If every director of a savings and loan and bank was brought before Congress for something that bank did, we wouldn't have time to do anything else.
Yes, but in his case, there was at least a number of instances of suggested behavior, such as the time when someone was going to pay his company $3 million, was doing business with Silverado, the savings and loan company of which he was director, and wanted loans forgiven then, and Neil Bush did not disclose it to his fellow directors.
Well, Sam, I wish he was here to defend himself, but he isn't. As I said to you, I know him. I cannot imagine that he willfully did anything wrong. He's a director. There are thousands of directors all over this world who sit on boards, and management go ahead and do things. I just don't see this as anything more than an issue that's aimed at the president's son. Sorry about that.
Let me go to a larger issue of the consequences of Republican governance. Is it not the case that if the Darman plan for cutting the budget and complying with Gramm-Redmond were bought, every decimal point of it, by the Democrats in Congress and enacted today, Gramm-Redmond still would not be complied with?
That's correct, George, but I think you have to view the Darman plan in the light of the negotiations that go on. There are 22 of us sometimes in the room trying to come forward with a plan. Incidentally, I'm an optimist. I think it's going to happen. So we have 3 weeks of talking about the particulars of the problem. It comes time for somebody to put an offer down. Now, it's not hardly possible that the first offer on the table is going to be either the last or the best. But somebody has to start. Dick Darman started on behalf of the administration. I'm glad he did.
We're now coming to the end of 10 years of Republican administration in this country, during which the federal budget deficit simply grew exponentially. As a result of Republican governance, after 10 years, 1/7 of the federal budget goes to pay interest on the federal debt. It would take a sum equal to all the income taxes collected west of the Mississippi just to pay the interest on the federal borrowing. And that goes, of course, disproportionately to Republicans, to the holders of Treasury bills, rich individuals and institutions. Shouldn't the American people say, this is not an equitable kind of government we're getting from Republicans?
Well, I'm not sure your statistics are right. I
think they are.
Are they? You think they hold more than the pension funds and the insurance companies?
Well, I'm saying rich individuals and institutions
well,
are getting
maybe
this.
as well, sure. But the major repository of savings in this country are in the pension funds, the insurance companies, and the like. And I think they're the biggest holder of government bonds. But anyway, I think you've got your point on the right place. Simply that we have to get a budget deficit correction at this particular time. I think we'll get it. We don't have any choice. I've said a number of times in the meetings we've had these weeks, we're going to fix the deficit. Simply it's going to be done at the time of the debt limit, at the time of the sequester, or because markets tell us we're behaving foolishly. We are going to have a budget deal, and it will happen sooner rather than later.
Okay. Again, I just want to talk about what it means to be a Republican in light of all this. People became Republicans some years ago because they felt tougher in the Cold War, Republicans were, and fiscal probity, balanced budgets, pay as you go, pay your bills. The Cold War is over, and the Republicans have the worst record in the history of the Republic going away as far as running up deficits.
Well, you say Republicans as though there wasn't a Congress in this equation. There is a Democratic Congress for the last 4 years, from 86 to 90.
But as you know, Mr. Secretary, generally at the state level or the federal level, executives get approximately what they ask for in the way of spending, and that's been the pattern now.
Well, I can't agree with that. The president's idea is that there's plenty of spending in this country that doesn't need to take place.
Has this president or the Reagan president, President Reagan, ever submitted a balanced budget?
Well, submitted a balanced budget, maybe not, but submitted a budget that met the Graham-Rudman targets. Last year we did.
But you just told us that the latest proposal, the most recent fine-tuning, didn't even comply with the law.
You said ever, George. This particular year, we've got a problem, and that's why I say there's going to be a deal. There has to be.
Mr. Secretary, what is your latest estimate? I know you keep revising it, of the savings and loan problem in terms of money.
Sam, I revised the estimate about 2 weeks ago and said that the problem in present value terms will be between $90 and $130 billion. That's greater than we said in the fall of 1989 when the FIREA legislation went through. It's greater for a number of reasons. One, we've gotten into the inside savings and loans to see exactly how much the losses are. They're bigger than we thought they are. And the real estate market has gotten back. This shouldn't be a big mystery.
What should we do about that? Should we go ahead and sell all of these properties in a fire sale sense? Should we hold them and accrue interest on that and wait for the market to strengthen? What's the best deal for the taxpayer?
Well, the best deal for the taxpayer, in my opinion, is to get these assets back into the public's hands through the RTC. We ought to go ahead and push the process like Bill Siegman said.
Even if it takes more than the 20% discount that they've already said they'll grant?
Go, let the market take care of it. If it takes more than 20%, then do it. Get it in the public hands. The U.S. government shouldn't be in the real estate business.
Mr. Secretary, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. This subject is not going away. Come back again, will you?
Thank you.
Happy to have you. Coming next, our discussion here, which is guaranteed not to add 1 cent to the deficit, and joining us will be Cokie Roberts of ABC News. In a moment.
The future holds unlimited possibilities. Some bleak, some bright. Opportunities to enjoy a more active retirement, to stretch our children's minds.
Open your computers, please.
To benefit from advanced technology. The choices we make now will write the future. Our visions can help you realize its promise. Merrill Lynch, we're bullish on the 90s.
There's just something about a Canon color laser copier. Maybe it's the way it makes drawings come alive, or the way it captures the sharpness and detail of photos. Or it might be the fact that Canon has the world's most advanced digital technology. Whatever it is, it makes quite an impression. The Canon color laser copier, the digital difference. Call toll-free, 1-800-OK-CANON.
Over the sound of rain, we hear the roar of Pontiac excitement. It is a GM 16-valve 4 that survived 400 hours at full throttle without a whimper. And this world-class 6 is taken to the limit night after night, improving Pontiac endurance. GM engines are rated more dependable than all the other domestic makers. So take a closer look at Pontiac. With 77 models redesigned and engineered, GM is putting quality on the road.
Every second of every day, there are 3 new mouths in this world to feed. Hundreds of millions more by the year 2000. And the majority of them will be born in countries where malnutrition is already reaching alarming proportions. Right now, the world has the food and the resources to conquer hunger. But it won't happen as long as we continue to look the other way. ADM, supermarket to the world.
Sunday, Kirstie Alley, Ricardo Montalban, Leonard Nimoy, and William Shatner, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Hi, this is Rodney. Join me on the All-Star Pro Sports Awards. I'm a little disappointed, though. They left out my favorite sport, mud wrestling.
Tomorrow night on ABC.
Nelson Mandela has been traveling from one American city to another and is arriving here in Washington sometime today. What would be your assessment of the reaction to him so far, George?
Well, it's traditional in the sense that there's an old tradition in this country of ethnic groups finding echoes of their aspirations from abroad, the Irish, the Poles, the Hungarians, and all the rest. It's magnified in this case by saturation coverage of television. I don't think his presence in this country makes a particle of difference to this country, and a week from now will be forgotten. But it will have a substantial echo in South Africa, where he will return a consolidated and enlarged figure.
Well, George, it's more than ethnic groups. Nelson Mandela is the expression of everything that Ronald Reagan always preached, as well as people in South Africa against apartheid. He is the manifestation of freedom winning. Here is a man who had been in jail for 27 years. They couldn't even mention his name at one point in South Africa without it being a crime. And he has prevailed. He has won. And he comes to this country, I think, not just as a black South African, but he comes to this country as a freedom fighter. Again, to use Ronald Reagan's words, that has won. And I think you can't rain on his parade here. It's bigger than Nelson Mandela.
He comes as a genuine hero, and this country seems to love heroes. I suppose everybody does, but we really do. And he obviously fills that bill, at least for the moment. What's fascinating is to see people trying to get in on the act. Apparently, the ticket to the joint session of Congress that he'll be addressing this week is the hottest ticket in town. Everybody wants one. And the Democrats in Congress are trying to figure out a way to take advantage of his trip. They're bringing up a civil rights bill on the day that he comes to the Congress and trying to force Republicans to vote against that bill on that day with Nelson Mandela there in the Congress. I mean, it's all sort of just everybody trying to use this great figure to their own political advantage.
Has he hurt himself during this trip by saying such nice things about Fidel Castro, Muammar Gaddafi, and Yasser Arafat?
I think he has hurt himself with certain Americans, no question about it. One thing that happens with heroes is the closer you get to them, the less heroic they seem. And as long as he was distant, it was easier to hold him up. But also, I think those are people that supported him in days when nobody else was supporting him, and he does have a certain loyalty to those people.
Those people, like it or not, are part of revolutionary movement. Now, many Americans don't like it for various reasons, but Mandela is quite correct, as you point out, in saying, they supported me, I'm not going to renounce my friends.
I'm sorry.
I think it would have hurt him had he taken the other tack.
That's a bit pat to say that he can be forgiven. Warm words for one of the few remaining really squalid dictators.
Most of the time I'm accused of not being articulate at all. Now you accuse me of being too pat.
Castro, two of the world's foremost terrorists, Arafat and Gaddafi, that does seem to me just a trifle too perfunctory.
Oh, George, they're terrorists to us, perhaps, but they're not terrorists to other people
They
in the
are
world.
terrorists to those whom they kill with terrorism.
Yeah, this is the old argument. Menachem Begin was a terrorist. He blew up the King David Hotel, but not to the people.
It would have been better for
Israel.
Nelson Mandela not to have made those statements here. It does raise tremendous hackles
Can we
on
clear
a lot of
something
our...
up? Is to Sam Donaldson Gaddafi a terrorist? Just speak for Donaldson.
Well, yes. If I were there, I suppose I wouldn't fare very well. But then Sam Donaldson, perhaps unlike George Will, is not the only person in the world. My views are not the only ones in the world.
Is Arafat a terrorist?
Can we? No, as a matter of fact, Arafat, if I were Palestinian, would be my hero.
I think it's mommy time.
Okay, well...
what about Commander Zero?
To the north. We don't have much news from Canada because they're very nice, civilized, well-behaved people, and not much happens there that we call news. But at the moment it appears there is some chance, I don't know how much, that Canada's coming apart, that Quebec has asked for a special treatment, has failed to get it, has been turned down by the other states, provinces, and I don't know that it will, but it may withdraw from Canada. What would happen? George?
Well, it would be a very sad thing, but before we get to the sadness of it all is the sheer, astonishing nature of all this. Here you have a very prosperous, content, educated, bourgeois, middle-class country coming unstuck over French and English letters on signs. Now, what's that tell you? I think it tells us something about the mood of a fundamentally happy period. People will
there
reach
more to it than that, George?
Well, very little. I mean, I do think that English-speaking Canada has been very, very accommodating of French Canada's aspirations for cultural identity. And it does tell you something that as the bigger issues of the world, sheer material scarcity, food, shelter, clothing, that used to preoccupy people for millennia, as they get solved, do people become happy? No. They start fighting over French and English letterings on signs.
But this human happiness never had forever to be pursued and never caught.
Sorry?
Human happiness, ever to be pursued, but never caught.
I guess.
Canada never had the cohesiveness that the United States had. Our original colonies all spoke English, and we formed together. That country never did have a constitution like ours.
Yeah, and the one never had a civil war like ours.
The one they tried to put into effect in 1982, we have now seen, has not stuck because of the differences. You can call it differences in the sign. I think the lesson is something we ought to pay attention to. In our Southwest, people speak Spanish, and more of them are coming across the border every day, and they're speaking Spanish. And you may say it's just a sign or something, but our Southwest is rapidly becoming a different country.
Well, and this week we have an island off our coast that's part of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico where Spanish is the language, and this week the Congress is taking up the question of whether Puerto Rican statehood should be accepted. The president's men have been in Puerto Rico trying to promote statehood. I think it's very interesting, this notion that we want to annex, or that some people in this country annex a 51st state that is of Spanish-speaking, at the same time that you have our neighbors to the north falling apart over language.
Well, maybe we'll get
Newfoundland
in Nova
historical
Scotia.
romance. Why does George Bush want Puerto Rico to be a state?
Apparently, there is, first of all, the Republicans in Puerto Rico have wanted it to be a state for a long time.
Are they going to send Republican senators
here? They think they are. They believe that they will send Republican senators here. But it's hard for me to believe it. Their delegates in Congress have not been Republicans.
But that's why George Bush may support Puerto Rico and oppose the District of Columbia becoming a state. Because here, it's a lead pipe cinch, you'll get two
Normally,
Democrats.
when you do this, when you bring a state in with one party, you get another one. Alaska, Hawaii had that, and then they switched.
One Republican,
Right.
one... That's
And then
the
they
only
switched.
reason it was ever done.
We need a new Missouri Compromise.
Politics uber alles. We have a new ruling from the Supreme Court saying that people cannot be given or denied jobs because of their political affiliation. Have I got that right?
Discharged on the basis of, when it came time to cut rolls in Illinois, they said, well, you're a Democrat. You're gone.
Well, it's known to happen in numerous states.
Well, that's part of the complaint with this decision, is they gave no weight at all to an American tradition. They said, well, patronage is wicked, and therefore they constitutionalized it, as they generally do, these judges. They said it burdened the exercise of First Amendment speech and associational rights to have a kind of political test there. The interesting thing is, as Judge Scalia pointed out in his dissent, every judge now going to administer this anti-patronage legislation. Every judge is in violation of it because all of them were appointed, Republican judges, almost all of them, by Republican presidents and Democrats by Democrats.
Anything to add to that? Or you want to tell us what you think about the flag vote in the House?
I would like to tell you what I think about the flag vote in the House, because one of the things that I think was very interesting about it was that here you had all of this politics around the flag and all the question of the 30-second spot that would be made against the politician who voted against the flag. And in the end, the House defeated the amendment by a healthy margin, and there were plenty more votes ready to vote against that amendment if they were needed. And I think that what it really shows is that when you get into issues like this, patriotism, pornography, the arts, that kind of thing, that it's going to be very difficult to run against individual House members on those issues. That because that House member is back home in the district every weekend, at the church picnic, at the grade school graduation, that nobody believes it about him or her. They just simply don't believe that that person is a pornographer who's unpatriotic.
It's the other fellow.
But the Senate, it could be very effective in a Senate race. And when the Senate is supposed to be the more removed body from the passions of the people, the truth is they're closer to it on issues like this because of the politics.
I think the House did the right thing in turning down that amendment, and I want to admit error. Last Sunday, I said I thought Congress wouldn't stop it, and it would have to be stopped in the states. And I also want to say that Tom Foley, the Speaker, gets a lot of credit and has put to rest to a large extent the rap on him, which was that, unlike Jim Wright, he couldn't get tough. He couldn't actually crack the whip.
Well,
he did it in a gentle way, but he was effective.
Admitting error.
Oh, I make error all the time.
In that position. We have to wind it up. The time is up. Thank you all. Be back in a moment with a few words about this week's clash between politics and patriotism in a moment.